Good evening and welcome to the 89th Annual Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards ceremony presented by the Cleveland Foundation. Please welcome to the house the esteemed Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards jurors and honorees. And to begin our program this evening, please welcome to the stage Cleveland Foundation President and CEO Lillian Curry.
Good evening. Good evening. Cleveland showed up tonight, just as you always do. Welcome the jurors and the winners in as well. We still have some folks parking outside, and there's a bit of a line out there, but we're going to get started. And I wanted to let you know that some of the reason we have some of the parking issues is that this year is the first year that all 1,200 of the tickets sold out in less than 2 hours for this event. Which demonstrates a committed community that fosters critical dialogue on race and social justice. For 89 years, the winners of the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards have illuminated the most consequential issues in our society and called on us to realize a more just and equitable future. I am so honored to welcome everyone joining us here at the Maltz Performing Arts Center and around the world tuning in via live stream. We are thrilled that our great mayor, Mayor Justin Bibb, is in the house. We thank you for coming for the last 2 years and for championing the awards and for your leadership of this great city. I also want to recognize the tremendous leadership of the Cleveland Foundation current and former board members. We are joined here tonight by our board chair, Connie Hill-Johnson, and our vice chair, Randell McShepard, and many current and former board members and staff. And I'm going to ask you all please to stand and be recognized for your leadership. I want to give a special shout out to Karen Long and Mary Louise Hahn. Where are they? They are here. The former leaders of the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards, we thank you both, Karen and Mary Louise, for your leadership of this movement and prize that you both are unparalleled stewards of. I want to especially thank the guests who've traveled from far here to Cleveland. We have visitors coming to this awards ceremony from 10 states, as far as California, Arizona, Florida, and New York. And this year is the first year, to my knowledge, that all of the world-renowned Anisfield-Wolf jurors are here tonight, and you're going to hear from them. We are also grateful for the stewardship of the jurors, and we are going to ask them to stand and be recognized for their great service of this award ceremony. This prize has always been a vanguard of our cultural discourse. In 1959, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. won an Anisfield-Wolf Award for his book, Stride Toward Freedom, 4 years before the March on Washington. Dr. King is one of 7 Nobel Prize winners in the Anisfield canon, which also includes more than 20 Pulitzer Prize winners and 15 MacArthur Geniuses. And it all started right here on the shores of Lake Erie, a land that nourished the Anisfield-Wolf winners Langston Hughes and Toni Morrison, as well as Edith Anisfield-Wolf herself. In 1935, Cleveland poet and philanthropist Edith Anisfield-Wolf had the foresight to establish these awards. Today, it remains the only juried American book prize celebrating works that address topics of racism and human diversity. Inspired by her Jewish faith and a Hebrew concept of tikkun olam, which means repair the world, Edith understood the power of the healing of the arts and the duty that we all share to be in community with one another. The Cleveland Foundation has proudly endowed this prize in perpetuity because it so deeply aligns with our founding ethos, a commitment to equitable and vibrant communities and the courage to address society's most intractable issues. In recent years, we've expanded the reach of the prize to local audiences through Cleveland Book Week, a series of literary events presented by the Foundation and our brilliant partners, Cleveland Public Library, Literary Cleveland, and the Great Lakes African American Writers Conference. The Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards are part of an incredible international literary tradition, carried forward by this year's winners, Ned Blackhawk, Teju Cole, Monixa Youn, and Maxine Hong in Kingston. And this evening, we mark a new chapter in the Anisfield-Wolf story as we create the first ceremony headed by our distinguished new jury chair, Natasha Threadway. Natasha is a literary rock star. She is a former poet laureate of the United States, a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and a member of the Pulitzer Prize Board, as well as 2021 Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winner for nonfiction. We are so honored and grateful for her commitment to this prize and her leadership of this esteemed jury. Please join me in welcoming Natasha to the stage to lead tonight's award ceremony.
Thank you and good evening. I am so excited. And thank you, Lillian. It is really good to be in Cleveland to celebrate the 89th class of Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winners. We are here to celebrate the power of books that shift our understanding of the world around us and that help us to imagine new worlds. This year's Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winners unearth histories both personal and collective. They transport us to the verdant gardens of 18th century Hopi villages in the American Southwest and to the vibrating music clubs of modern-day Bamako, Mali. They probe the spaces between otherness and belonging and trace the journeys of people, objects, and ideas. In doing so, they invite us to reclaim our own narratives. In a moment, we will invite this year's winners to the stage to accept their awards. But first, I want to recognize two people who have shaped the Anisfield-Wolf canon as longtime members of the jury. This year, Rita Dove and Steven Pinker will retire from their roles on the Anisfield-Wolf jury. Rita, after 33 years of service. And Steven, after 22 years of service. Over these years, Rita and Steven have stewarded the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards with intellectual rigor and deep personal care. To say more about Steven Pinker's contributions to this prize, I would like to invite to the stage Charles King, whose book, Gods of the Upper Air, won the 2020 Anisfield-Wolf Book Award for nonfiction. Charles is also an incoming juror, and we are thrilled to welcome him to the jury for the 2025 award season, along with Disha Filia and Luis Alberto Urea. Please join me in welcoming Charles to the stage.
Thank you, Natasha, and good evening, everyone. As writers, most of us understand that a key to maintaining some semblance of sanity is not to put too much weight on book reviews and book critics. Of course, there's a notable exception, and that's when those reviews are thoughtful and positive. And when one of those reviewers is the brilliant Steven Pinker. Well, I can't think of greater affirmation for a writer than that theirs is a book that matters, that theirs is a book that has the power to make a difference. I'm proud to be among the many Anisfield-Wolf Book Award-winning authors whose work has been affirmed by Steve and Rita and their jury peers. Amid an incredibly packed schedule as a Harvard professor, prolific author, in-demand speaker, and one of our most compelling and innovative modern thinkers, Stephen has managed to find the time for the past 22 years to serve on the Anisfield-Wolf jury. I've seen personally how seriously he takes the role of an Anisfield-Wolf juror and the immense responsibility that goes with furthering the tradition of the awards. In his resonant book, Enlightenment Now, Stephen writes, quote, "It's in the nature of progress that it erases its tracks, and its champions fixate on the remaining injustices and forget how far we've come." In many ways, the Anisfield-Wolf Awards assure those tracks of progress are not erased. Rather, for nearly 90 years, they've created an unmatched canon that chronicles both injustices and hard-earned progress for the benefit of generations to come. So please join me in deep appreciation of Steven Pinker and his incredible devotion to the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards.
Thank you. What an honor it has been to serve on the Anisfield-Wolf Book Prize jury, and what a pleasure it has been. It's been a pleasure to work with people in the Cleveland Foundation, Mary Louise Hahn and Karen Long. I have learned much and formed friendships and enjoyed my discussions and often arguments with my fellow jurors, with Simon Schama and Joyce Carol Oates, and Rita Dove, and the inimitable Henry Louis Skip Gates. I have been exposed to just a stupendous canon of work. Sometimes the worst in human nature brings out the best in human writers and scholars, but I have been exposed to gorgeous writing, deep scholarship, startling insights. When I wrote my own book on writing style and I had to pick examples of good writers to appreciate, some of the winners of the Anisfield Book Prize provided some of the best examples of prose. I'm very proud, too, that the mission of enhancing awareness of racism and diversity, we have striven to make that not a divisive or a polarizing experience, but to emphasize how bigotry is a worldwide and a timeless problem. It has affected many peoples over the years, and that the attempt to, the mandate to look squarely at our past and at the injustices of the present needn't divide us. It can embolden and unite us in making further progress. And finally, I have to say that one of the great pleasures of serving on the jury is coming to these annual events in Cleveland, to feel the the warmth, the camaraderie, the citizenship, the commitment of the people of Cleveland who have come together is just a heartening and enlivening and gratifying experience. So thank you very much to the Cleveland Foundation. Thank you very much to the citizens of Cleveland, and thanks to my fellow members of the jury.
Thank you again, Stephen, for your many wonderful years of service on this jury. Now, it is my distinct honor and deep pleasure to acknowledge the contributions of my friend and mentor, Rita Dove, as she retires from the Anisfield-Wolf Awards jury after her 33 years. Rita's work has changed so many of us here today, including me. Her Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Thomas and Beulah, was the first book my father gave me when I was on my way to graduate school. I carried it with me everywhere I went. It was my Bible, and it showed me that my family's stories, the stories of my own maternal grandmother, could become poetry. Rita has blazed new trails for generations of writers and readers. In 1987, she became the third Black woman to win a Pulitzer Prize, following Gwendolyn Brooks in poetry and Alice Walker in fiction. And in 1993, she became the first African American to serve as United States Poet Laureate. As a member of the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards jury since 1991, Rita's leadership has expanded the canon immeasurably, especially with the addition of the poetry category beginning in 2015. As Rita aptly observed, quote, "If we're going to solve the problems of the world, we have to learn how to talk to one another. Poetry is the language at its essence. It's the bones and skeletons of the language. It teaches you, if nothing else, how to choose your words." Rita has taught us so much through her careful choice of words. A daughter of Akron, Ohio, Rita's writing and advocacy have shifted the ground of American letters. Please join me in welcoming Rita Dove to the stage.
I told myself I wasn't going to cry, and that's what I will try to do. You know, when Henry Louis Gates Jr., AKA Skip, phoned me 30-odd years ago to ask if I would join him and Ashley Montague on the jury of the Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards, I agreed for several reasons. Although I had not heard of Anisfield-Wolf before that phone call, I immediately warmed to its mission, namely to draw attention to and to reward those who illuminated diversity and equity and inclusion. And secondly, no one says no to Henry Louis Gates, right? You know. Despite the high esteem in which I held my two soon-to-be fellow jurors, there was another reason, and that is I felt that such deliberations really were in need of a creative writer's input. But lastly, the fact that these awards had been established and were the brainchild and the legacy of a Clevelander, which that promised to me a venture that was going to be marked by the no-nonsense enthusiasm that many of us born and raised in northeastern Ohio lay claim to. So I was on board. But little did I know back then in 1991 just how fantastic a journey it would be for me personally, because those 33 years on this jury went by, it seems, in a minute, in large part due to the immense satisfaction I got working year-round and year by year with such wise and impassioned colleagues, the late Stephen J. Gould, Joyce Carol Oates, Stephen Pinker, Simon Sharma, and of course Skip. But also because of the guidance that I received from those fantastic administrators, Mary Louise Hahn and Karen Long, two indefatigable and meticulous facilitators who clocked the timetables for our decisions and made sure that each entry was cataloged and the boxes of books shipped out and received by us in good time. And then, of course, there were the books. So many amazing books, the prime source of our attention and our love and our sometimes dismay at the things we discovered. All those books of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, it was a bounty beyond measure. It was crowned also by the opportunity to praise and to celebrate our literary cultural icons with the annual Lifetime Achievement Award. And so for all of those years of discovery and deep delights, I send my abiding gratitude also not only to those I've mentioned before, but as well to the late Stephen Minter, to Ron Richards, to the Cleveland Foundation, and the Cleveland Foundation's board and staff. There are many, many working parts that make this evening possible. But my final thank you goes out to you, because as Stephen mentioned, there is such an incredible warmth from this audience. You have gone and cheered on those who have won the Anisfield Book Awards. You have bought their books, which is really important. You are the living proof that reading is manna for the human spirit. So thank you. I will miss being here, but I'll come back every once in a while. Thank you.
She cupped her hands to the window to see out. A thin moon pricked through the clouds and the long grass waved. That is the same moon that they see in New Society Village, she thought. The same stars.
Columbian Exhibition of 1893, sweeping new visions of American history proliferated. Within each monument, celebratory parade, and commemorative publication, visions of a confident and certain past deepened across the nation's historical consciousness.
Surely this sickness came to our lands with the coming of the magpies. And surely, therefore, the magpies have brought this sickness to our lands through the uncleanness of their food and the uncleanness of their ways. And then some Westerners hunted the magpies.
Only later did I realize that what I was hearing was the sound of my own blood circulating through my body, the blood in my own head. I was hearing in a way I hadn't heard before, the sound of myself being alive.
And now it's time to honor our class of 2024 winners. Please welcome to the stage Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards juror and 2022 nonfiction winner Taya Miles to present this year's nonfiction award.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It's quite a delight to be back here with you in Cleveland. As we know, we live in a moment when revisionist historical narratives are proliferating, many times attempting to cloud or even cloak the painful realities of our past. In contrast, and to our shared benefit, our nonfiction award winner, Ned Blackhawk, seeks not to hide truths, but rather to reveal them in his tour de force, The Rediscovery of America. In doing so, he demonstrates the critical importance of Native American history in U.S. history, and also, significantly, to Indigenous peoples themselves. Through an astonishing array of detail drawn from the most meticulous research and deep understanding, Blackhawk succeeds in telling a fuller, more complex story than the ingrained narrative of Native Americans' role in this country's evolution. It's a story that I know I wasn't told in my high school history classes, and I bet you weren't told it either. But it's a story that we certainly should have been taught and that we must know. The Rediscovery of America is a rare and ambitious work that interprets a vast number of societies over 5 centuries to argue for a thoroughgoing reorientation of the larger national narrative. This book invites readers into valuable conversations about the stakes of encounters across cultural differences. And indeed, these are the conversations that we should be having as we consider how to interpret and truthfully present the history of the United States and the many people who now reside here on these indigenous lands. We are deeply grateful to Ned Blackhawk for expanding these conversations beyond the university seminar room into the many spaces of our public culture, such as this gorgeous hall tonight. Please join me in celebrating the 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards nonfiction winner, Ned Blackhawk.
Taya, thank you so very much for that incredible and generous recognition and introduction, and to the jury and the entire Anisfield-Wolf community. It's been a wonderful, rich experience being here, full of so much conversation, connection, creativity, and indeed community. And it was really a particular honor to be in conversation with Cynthia Donnelly this afternoon and to meet so many members of the Cleveland Native American community. We were asked to provide a few minutes to share some of our reactions and perspectives. And giving a historian 4 to 5 minutes isn't usually a good idea. We're not known for our brevity, nor abbreviated remarks, generally. I do wish, by example, that I'd actually written that 13th chapter that Cynthia asked me about earlier today. And as we've been discussing the past few days together, writing can be a difficult challenge that requires not only time but also support. And my wife Maggie has been the biggest supporter and champion of this project, and this book is dedicated to her. It took shape over so many years, but particularly in conversation and across many, many summer months. I've also been fortunate beyond measure to have been raised by loving parents. An only child, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, where, as I mentioned earlier today, my mom was a public school teacher. And my father, who turns 84 soon, chose not to make the drive here this weekend. Hotels and evening banquets have never really been his priorities. Someone who grew up hunting rabbits for breakfast in the dusty and often morning chill of central Nevada. I'd like to share my remarks today in recognition of this award in his honor and in appreciation for what is obviously a lifetime of support. I did write a bit about our family's history in my first book, Violence Over the Land, where themes of violence and dispossession and pain frame approaches to the history of our tribal homelands in a region referred to often as either the Intermountain West or the American Great Basin. We call this region Nuwa Segovia, or land of the Nuwa people, who are also known as Western Shoshone. That book, and now this book, provide, I hope, complementary bookends to my own academic and intellectual development, to my own projects of discovery, of trying to find insight into deeper and often darker historical subjects that, as Taya was mentioning, are not sufficiently or often sufficiently recognized across our national community. It takes time and much labor to move past the inherited wisdoms of earlier generations, to build new and more inclusive paradigms. All the authors being recognized this evening, Monica, Teju, Maxine, all work to transform understandings of the presumptions about the past, present, and ultimately future, to broaden visions of subjectivity and citizenship here in America. It's a tremendous joy and honor to be recognized first this evening amidst such venerable and distinguished company. I'm immensely grateful to be joining this distinguished community. And thank you all so very much again for your recognition and support.
Please welcome to the stage Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards juror and 2017 fiction winner Peter Ho Davies to present this year's Fiction Award.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. Good evening, Cleveland, I should say. Every time I come back here, I'm reminded of what an amazing literary town this is. It's a pleasure to be amongst you again. In Teju Cole's brilliant, extraordinary novel, Tremor, we meet Tunde, a Nigerian academic and artist leading a seemingly comfortable existence in the United States as a teacher and photographer. That existence is upended, however, when on an antiquing trip to Maine, Tunde comes across a traditional African mask. An exploration of how that mask, and Tunde himself, got there leads to a deeper consideration of the ethics of art, specifically the troubling legacy of appropriation of artwork, often through theft or looting. The result is an engagement with art, both deeply felt and deeply thought, that is itself a singular artistic achievement. At one point in the novel, Tunde is at a speaking engagement when he asks his audience, what does it mean to care about art but not about the people who make the art? It's that question, and many more, that this novel asks us as readers as we view the world through Tunde's eyes. In surfacing these questions, Teju Cole furthers an enduring legacy of Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winners. These are books that challenge assumptions, reveal injustices, both subtle and blatant, and leave their readers changed. Please join me in congratulating our 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Award winner for fiction, Teju Cole.
I'm grateful to the jurors for this award and to Peter Ho Davies for his perceptive and compassionate citation. In the little time I have up here, I want to think a bit about the difference between the material and the spiritual. We have to be reminded, because we often forget, that any improvement in our material circumstances comes about by material means, whether that be quality healthcare, precise transportation, reliable agriculture, robust emergency response, or some other communal function. These functions are subject to politics and the means by which politics is influenced: activism, protest, journalism, and obviously money. That is the material realm. The spiritual is something else again, and this is the domain of art, including the art of literature. The spiritual is vital. Without it, the material life is impoverished and sometimes not even worth living. We have to be serious about what art can and cannot do. It is a common but grave mistake to conflate art with activism, a conflation that lessens both because they are speaking two different languages at two different volumes with complementary but distinct aims. When they are combined, the result is cacophonous. One of their differences is that activism is concerned with clarity and efficiency. Art is something more sublimely elusive. It is a peculiar defense of human dignity that sets great store by privacy, ambiguity, irresolution, and even complicity. These perhaps are not the triumphal terms we are used to, but I believe that the thing we call literature occasions communication with the dead, and that is triumph enough. It also occasions communication with that aspect of living that is careless of chronology or geography. The writer is one who places her ear to a wall that no one else can see and transcribes as best as she is able the sounds coming through from the other side. We are not against the visible world. We just don't have to live on its terms. I'm saying all this because I know, as artists have always known, that art is vulnerable to co-optation, malign co-optation, or the more well-meaning kind. But when art is neutered in this way, controversy becomes a bad word. HR departments and social sanction have goaded us into never giving offense. Controversy, contra, against, vertere, to turn. We go to literary art especially for its ability to turn against received wisdom, for its access to the word in its undiminished candor and undispersed potential. Let us say, for instance, that you wish to oppose an allegedly sensible xenophobia or an apparently necessary genocide. If your opposition is merely reactive, you might not be able to sustain it for the long haul. The oppositional self, which must speak into the world, has to be nurtured in solitude and silence. In literature and in all fully achieved art, contradiction remains unresolved, and in this is its paradoxical consolation. This is why official art, scoured of all contradiction, can sometimes impress, but seldom consoles. Because real art speaks with the idiosyncratic voice of one soul to another, it can be the place of a sustained courage, as opposed to the merely socially contagious type. In saying all this, I wish to side with irregularity, inconsistency, whatever is rough-hewn or handmade, whatever is weak, wayward, and wavering, whatever you thought you knew, whatever you didn't expect. All this is what I mean by the spiritual. You've been there. You know it when you see it. And I have even come to believe that the greatest value in receiving an award such as this one is in the opportunity to speak to you of shadow things in a public place. Thank you.
And now, please welcome back to the stage Anisfield-Wolf Book Awards Jury Chair Natasha Trethaway to present this year's awards in poetry and lifetime achievement.
Wow, I got so caught up in applauding Teju that I forgot I was coming back up. Poetry, Alice Walker once said, is the lifeblood of rebellion, revolution, and the raising of consciousness. That lifeblood flows through Monica Youn's From, a breathtaking collection of poems that invites readers to consider the complexities of belonging as it explores themes about identity, cultural heritage, and displacement. As a daughter of Korean immigrants who grew up in Houston, Youn's poems offer deep reflections on being caught between different worlds and explore what it means to belong to different cultures simultaneously. Employing a dazzling array of hybrid forms, Youn has crafted a transformative book that, taken in whole, paints a devastating picture of the landscape that racial politics has wrought in this country. From represents a major contribution, deepening our ongoing conversation about what it means to be an American. I am thrilled that we can play a part in elevating that conversation by recognizing Monica Youn as our 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Poetry winner. Congratulations, Monica.
First triumph, I didn't trip walking up here. So when I was writing this book, I had a sticky note on my computer screen that said, show your work. That is to acknowledge the process, the searching and the learning and the reaching, the hesitation, and the never-ending self-doubt. And that's very much the spirit in which I want to say thank you for this award. I started writing from after the 2016 election and continued writing it until the year after the pandemic. That time now seems in some ways unimaginably long ago, as if I were a different, in some ways a more innocent or ignorant person. We've all learned so very much since then. Our tax dollars continue to fund the machinery of death, while despite our outrage and our sorrow, we are complicit and passive and unable to effect meaningful change. On Tuesday, as many of you know, a man died in Missouri. He spent 24 years on death row, although he was probably innocent of the crime for which he had been convicted. He wrote many poems during that time, poems to other inmates, poems about loneliness, about climate change, about love. His name was Khalifa Marcellus Williams. One of his last poems was dedicated to the resilience of the children of Palestine. And the poem is freely available online. When I read the poem, like many others, I was captivated by the image of a person who, from his cell on death row, was somehow able to look through the bars, beyond the bars, across the ocean and the land to the suffering of others. But even beyond that, I was awed by this man's ability to take control of his own story. As Marcellus Williams, thousands of pages of paper had been written about him, calling him criminal, convict, inmate, and others calling him defendant, plaintiff, appellee. But as Khalifa, he was able to name himself, not as inmate, not as victim, not as symbol or martyr, but as a person of faith, as an author, as a poet. And through this self-naming, he was able, not tragically to escape, but in some important way to transcend the walls, the definitions that contained him. Looking back as if through a long-distance telescope at my book and my intentions for it, I think I was trying to get at something related to this. It's a book that features a number of containers, actual and metaphorical. A rice chest in which a prince dies of starvation and thirst, a skin which a mythological creature learns to live without, a racial identity composed of a set of externalized expectations imposed upon an Asian American girl, and my own apartment during a surge of anti-Asian hate when I felt that to walk around my own beloved neighborhood in Brooklyn was to make myself a visible target. These containers were constructed, interpreted, and deployed by the racial imagination. But to acknowledge this containment is not to deny the agency, the personhood, or ultimately the responsibility of those contained. After all, a container may have a bamboo ceiling, but it also features bamboo floors, bamboo walls through which we can peer to see other groups, other containers, to view the whole ever-moving architecture of hierarchy that racial capitalism constructs and maintains. To understand the history of Asian Americans is also to understand the ways in which Asian Americans have often been wielded as a tool or as a weapon against other racial groups in this country, and in turn have experienced othering, suspicion, and fear. Every year they tell us to focus on Asian American history in May, Black history in February, Indigenous peoples' heritage in November, and Latina heritage from September 15th to October 15th. But it's only through looking at the whole architecture, through learning each other's histories and each other's here and now, that we can come to a deeper understanding and start to find a path forward. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here in this particular room with Maxine and Ned and Teju, with Natasha and Rita and Peter and Taya and Stephen. And I honor and congratulate you all. And I thank the foundation and all of you for being here tonight. The word solidarity is so terribly misused. As a poet, I've always resisted it because it sounds so, so solid, so blocky. And it doesn't make enough of the silence and the space between us, which are, in other ways, a part of our identities. But in this room, I feel a kind of mutuality, mutual celebration, mutual gratitude, mutual respect, resilience, and purpose. And I'll end with a quotation from another one of Khalifa Marcellus Williams's poems. How strange it is to become aware of another's heartbeat, but forget one's own. Thank you.
And now, it is my great honor to present our final award of the evening, the 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Book Award for Lifetime Achievement. Our winner this year, Maxine Hong Kingston, is a literary giant with a singular voice. In 1976, her debut book, The Woman Warrior, rocked the literary world. A deeply personal work blending family, history, memories, and folklore, the book defied conventions of genre and narrative. It earned praise from New York Times book critic John Leonard, a prize from the National Book Critics Circle, and, in my humble opinion, most notably, an Anisfield-Wolf Book Award for fiction. The Woman Warrior has remained a touchstone in American letters ever since, as a fixture on syllabi and bookshelves the world over, and an inspiration for writers from Barack Obama to Ocean Vuong. Hua Su's 2020 profile for The New Yorker put it simply: Maxine Hong Kingston has changed American culture. Kingston is a first-generation American, the daughter of a doctor and a scholar who immigrated from South China to California's Central Valley, where they owned a laundry and ran a gambling establishment. Kingston's writing speaks to her experience living between cultures and gives voice to the experience of so many Chinese Americans. For many writers, the spectacular debut of The Woman Warrior could be a hard act to follow, but Kingston was just getting started. She followed with a collection of essays, Chinamen, in 1980, this time tracing the history of the men in her family. It won the National Book Award. Since then, she has published several books that blend traditional genres, including novels, nonfiction, and poetry. Her most recent book, I Love a Broad Margin to My Life, published in 2011, is a memoir in verse reflecting on her experiences as a writer, teacher, activist, and pacifist. Today, at age 83, Kingston is, as the critic John Powers writes, quote, one of those rare figures who shifted American culture and who keeps on being relevant. She tells stories about creating your own identity, not settling for the one the world tries to give you. That rare ability, as we have learned, has the power to change all of us who have been fortunate enough to hold a Maxine Hong Kingston book in our hands. It gives me great pleasure to present Maxine Hong Kingston with the 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Lifetime Achievement Award.
thank you. Thank each and every one of you. My gratitude goes out to all of you. Tonight, I will talk you a true story. During the riots, after Rodney King was killed, a Korean American student came to my office, and I thought, oh no, she's going to tell me something terrible, and I have to be really strong to listen to her, because I was watching the news, and I saw the protesters in the streets, many of them African American, and some of them breaking into the stores, and then on the roof of a building, there was a row of Koreans, and they had guns. They looked like rifles, and they were training them on the streets, so this student comes in, and her mother owns a laundry, and of course I identify right away. My parents worked a laundry too, and I know exactly. I understood what she was going through. Is that her mother is always in the laundry. It never closes, not for holidays, and not until late at night, and it doesn't matter what's going on, you just have to keep working. And she was telling me that there was a black man who noticed this store, and he noticed that it was always open, and the people were always working in there, the mother and the father, and it was, and then he was thinking to himself, let me see whether I could interrupt that constant work. Maybe let me see whether I can get them to take a break, to slow down and not be working all the time. And so he would buy donuts and coffee, and he would go inside the laundry, and he would try to convince them to take a coffee break, and he did. They would stop. I imagine if they were anything like my parents, they'd be working and eating the donuts and coffee at the same time, and so he would do this every once in a while, and then on a night of the riots, at the beginning, he went to the laundry, and he went right up to my student's mother, and he says to her, "Give me your keys. We are going to lock up this store, and I am going to walk you home." And she agreed, and gave him the keys, and he locked up, and they walked together safely through the riots, and she got home. I hold this story. It feels to me like a jewel or a gem, and I hold that story in my heart, and it protects me, and through all kinds of terrible things, I know that kind of event happens all the time. I think many people do that, protect one another. But that kind of story does not get in the newspapers, and we don't hear about it, and we don't know. And the reason it doesn't get reported in the news, or nobody has written a story or a poem about it, I haven't either. And one reason is that, Aristotle taught us that that drama comes from conflict. And so how can we write a story in which there is nonviolence, where there wasn't a conflict and nothing happened? And so we don't get those stories out. But I did not read this, and I didn't witness it. I heard it. And so that makes me understand the power of storytelling, the story of talk, the power of talk story, the power of the oral tradition, that when we tell something, goes in the ear, into the body, and then we could hold it. And I feel like tonight I have told it, and I hope that you can hold it like a jewel, and it will protect you. I want to accept this award for that black man that walked into the laundry, and I also want to accept it for all those Hawaiian kids that escorted white kids home on Kill Howley Day. I guess what I'm saying is let's honor those people who my first word for those protectors, and a word I thought of calling them was, I know people are calling them allies, and I thought, I want to call them escorts, and I just thought of the right word for them. They are guardians. Thank you. And I see all of you here. We are with Edith Anisfield-Wolf's vision of us coming together. I see us all here. We are guardians. Thank you.
Congratulations again, Maxine. I'd like now to invite all of this year's winners to join us on stage once more. Please come back up. Monica Youn, whose beautiful poetry dissects race and broadens our understanding of the American experience. Monica. Please join us, Teju Cole, whose observant prose takes us awake, shakes us awake to the uneasy power dynamics of artistic creation and consumption. Teju. And Ned Blackhawk, whose meticulous research and careful narrative tell a more complete story of the United States. Ned. All right, let's hear it for our 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winners.
Congratulations to the 2024 Anisfield-Wolf Book Award winners. We invite you to continue the celebration with book sales and signings behind the stage in the Buckhold Family Commons, and to join us for a community reception across the street at the Park Lane Ballroom. Thank you for attending.